Oh, right. Okay. And what we're going to do today is we're going to start talking about personalities in Sefer Shmuel. Now, before the Chagim, we learned one shir. We spoke about shir. Let me just stop sharing for a minute, and afterwards we'll go back so I can see everybody. What we're going to discuss is we're going to discuss personalities in Sefer Shmuel. What do we mean by that? We're going to try, as we did in Sefer Yoshua and Sefer Shoftim, we're going to try to analyze the personalities who take place in the whole book. Before the Chagim, we just spoke about one dimension of the story of the birth of Shmuel, which was the prayer of Hannah, which had big impact on the whole tefillah of Rosh Hashanah, which we spoke about then. Today we're going to speak about one dimension of Shmuel's father. Now, what do I mean by one dimension? Everybody in their life has basically three dimensions. The first dimension is they themselves, their own personal traits. You then have, the second thing is family. Okay, if you take this week's parsha, what do we say? Lech lecha. ויאמר השם לאברהם, לך לך לארצך מולדתך מבית אביך, מולדתך מבית אביך. Okay, Abraham himself, his parents, and the place where he lived. And then you have Avraham Avinu, the husband, Sarah, the family life. Therefore, you have Elkana, the father of Shmuel, his basic personality traits. The second one is the husband, which we will see in the next couple of shiurim. The third one is Truma. What did he give Am Yisrael? What did he give over? What was his message, Am Yisrael? Now, what we're going to discuss today is, first of all, the message which he gave and the period which he lives in. That means his person's message or his job or how he sees his objective in his life is a function of the generation which he lives in. Okay? People who live in certain generations can develop their traits according to the needs of those generations. For instance, let's give ourselves a fascinating insight into the Chofetz Chaim. Rabbi Soel Meir HaKohen, the Chofetz Chaim, who wrote the Mishnah Brura, his greatness was he saw the needs of his generation. The first thing he did was he saw, and here I'm digressing 1 minute, just to give you a certain way of thinking, he saw the up-and-coming concept or idea of communications, public communications, newspapers, and the damage which newspapers can do. Therefore, he decides to write a book called Shmiras HaLoshon, Chofetz Chaim, how to deal with the Isurim of Lashon Hora in his particular age. The next thing he sees is how young Jewish boys are being kidnapped by the Tsar, and putting them in the army. He writes a book called Machane Yisrael, a very small book, which is meant for soldiers. How do you keep mitzvahs under conditions in the army, in the Russian army? He then writes another book called Nidche Yisrael. He sees mass immigration from Russia and Poland. What are the Jews going to do when they get to their new countries? He writes a book called Nidche Yisrael. It's like a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, people who are leaving Russia and Poland. And not to speak about Mishnah Brura, and not to speak about Shmiras HaLoshon, etc., etc., etc. The greatness of the Chofetz Chaim was he saw what is needed in his generation. the impact which he had on his generation. Now, the same thing applies to every one of us. Okay, you take the great Reb Moshe Feinstein, who had the ability to give Piskei Halacha for an up-and-coming group of people who had emigrated from Russia and living in America. You had Rav Soloveitchik, who had the ability to synthesize between the philosophy, and you had the Lubavitcher Rebbe, okay, the three perhaps greatest leaders of American Jewry, had the ability to see all what was going on. Now, who was Elkana? And what was the impact of Elkana in his generation? That's what we're going to speak about. And after that, once we've delved into the message which Elkana wanted to give over, we'll then go back to his personality traits. And then we will go basically to his other, or his third dimension, was being a husband. Right. That is the plan for Elkana. Once we've finished Elkana, then we'll go to Hannah. After that, we'll go to Eliah Kohen, and after that, we'll go to Shmuel. We'll see how the makeup of Sefer Shmuel and the basic messages which Sefer Shmuel give every single one of us. So let's start off the first chapter of Sefer Shmuel. Okay, it's in front of you, and also I'm going to share screen, something which I don't really like to do, but because I can't see you all. Okay, so we're going to chop and change the whole time between share screening and speaking to all of you. Let's start off reading the sentences in front of us. This is the Haftarah which we say on first day Rosh Hashanah. Ish echad min haramatayim tzofim mihar Ephraim ushmo Elkana ben Yerucham ben Elihu ben Tochu ben Tzuf Ephrati. Okay, who he actually was, we'll speak about in a minute. Lo shtei nashim, he had two wives. Shem achat, Hannah. Shem hashniya, Pnina. Vayhi Pnina yeladim, and Pnina had children, and Hannah en yeladim, and we'll speak about Pnina also. Ba'ala ha'ish hahu, me'iro, miyamim yamima. This person used to go from his city, miyamim yamima, time after time, nishtachavot, lizboach l'Hashem tzvakot b'Shilo, and to offer up sacrifices to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Shiloh. Sham shnei bnei Eli, Hofni uPinchas, kohanim l'Hashem. Right. So the next part is Vayhi Hayom, Vayizbach Elkana. And the day came, and Elkanah went and offered up his sacrifices. V'natan li Pnina ishto, u'lechol banea uvnotea manot. And he gave to Pnina part of the korban. U'lechana yitein mana achat apayim. Elkanah he gave a double amount. Yet Chana ahev, Chana he loved. Hashem sagar rachma. Hashem closed up her womb. Etc., etc., etc. Sentence 7. V'chein ya'aseh. Shana b'shana. This is what he did every single year. Midei alota b'veit Hashem. Ein tichasna v'tivke v'lo tochal. She never wanted to eat. Now, we're going to jump over the next pasuk chet, which speaks about Elkanah and his wife. Then afterwards, she has a child in sentence chaf, line number 15. Because I borrowed him from Hashem. And Elkanah goes up and all his household, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to give his nedarim, his vows, and to offer up sacrifices. So if we were to summarize, Elkanah has one dream, one objective. And what was that? Going up to daven in Shiloh, leaving his house, going up to Shiloh, miyamim yamima, every few days or every few weeks or every few months, he used to go there. Now, this going up to Shiloh is quite amazing, and this is the subject of our shir. Elkanah going up to Shiloh. Now, let's see, who is he? What was his genealogy? Where did he live? Let's look at the Radak. Rabbi David Kimchi, one of the great commentators on the Tanakh. Yesh lefaresh sofim. Look at the sentence, it's written at the top. Min haramatayim, from the hills, Tzofim. What was Tzofim? Tzofim is Nevi'im. He was a prophet. Min, shezachar omed bimkom shnayim kilu min hatzofim. Klomar mishpachat tzofim, from a family of prophets. I'm jumping a line to line number 25. Zeu perosh nachon. Mishpachat Nevi'im haya. Was from a family of prophets. Mibnei Korach haya. He came from the family of Korach. Moshe mefurash yachaso b'divrei hayamim. It's written in Divrei Hayamim. Ubnei Korach neviim hayu. Hem Asir ve'Elkana ve'Yasaf. Elkana avi Shmuel haya mibnei banav shel Elkana ben Korach. So Shmuel comes directly from the family of Korach. Now, Korach, we all know, was a problematic personality. If we were to analyze the personality of Korach, it was made up of two different dimensions, and that's what we're going to speak about the next shiur. Elkanah, coming from the family of Korach. Therefore, he's a prophet. Where did he come from? Mehar Ephraim, line number 27. Mehar Ephraim. He was a Levi, and he lived in Eretz Ephraim. We know the tribe of Levi was scattered all around Eretz Israel. There were 48 cities. He lived in the mountains of Ephraim, which was in the area. If we were to analyze where Ephraim is, it is from Beit El northwards until you get to Shechem. Okay, if you picturize the map of Israel, it's north of Yerushalayim from Beit El until approximately about 10 kilometers north of Shechem. And then comes the tribe of Manasseh. It's one of the biggest areas of tribes in Israel. Now, Umashe Amar, says the Radak, Ihu va'avotav hayu garim b'har Ephraim, nir'eh, inachlatam hayasham. He lived there. B'bnei kahat hayu, ובני קהת להם ערים בהר אפרים, כמו שאמר בספר יהושע, ולמשפחות בני קהת הלוויים, שכם ואת מגרשיה בהר אפרים. So, Elkana lives in the tribe of Ephraim. He's a Levi who is there, and that's where he lives. Now, there's no Yerushalayim then. There's no Yerushalayim. The Mishkan is in Shiloh, in the center of the tribe of Ephraim. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the sentence, right at the beginning. Go back, we're going back to the top of the line. Vayhi ish echad. Okay, there was a man. Take note in sentence 3, pasuk gimel. Va'ala ha'ish hahu. Pasuk chaf aleph. Vayal ha'ish Elkana. That means we're talking about something specific here. Specific about a certain man. Now, besides that, what is quite amazing is the word Vayehi. Vayehi connects up with something which we learned before. Now we're going to speak about the period in which Elkanah lives. Let's look in this Midrash Agadah, line number 32. Vayehi ish echad min haramatayim. Say Chazal on that. Zeu she'amar hakatuv, asher od biksha nafshi, lo matzati, adam echad me'elef matzati. Sometimes I look for people and I can't find them. And sometimes I have the ability to find 1 in 1,000. One man amongst 1,000. Mahu. What does that mean? Ela, she'akadosh baruch hu רואה לדור שירשע. He sees a generation which are made up of bad people. הוא מחזר ומפקש. אפילו צדיק אחד שיתלה בשבילו. הקדוש ברוך הוא looks around, one person he can depend on. That is, אחד מאלף מצאתי. Generation which is degenerate, is bad. And sometimes in that generation, we need a person who can change that generation. Say Chazal, Ivan Shechatu Bimei Micha. The last chapter of Sefer Shoftim speaks about Esel Micha. Micha, who offer up Avodah Zarah. היו מקטרים לצלמו של מיכה. והיה העשן של שילה עולה מן הזבחים של הקדוש ברוך הוא. ועשן צלמו של מיכה עולה מהר אפרים מבית מיכה. On the one hand, you had the Mizbeach, the altar of Shiloh, going up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 20 kilometers away from that, you have the smoke from Pesel Micha. Mitarvim ba'achat. They get mixed up. Shneimar ala ashan ba'apo. Esh mipiv tochel. Chalim baruba. There's no pure smoke. The smoke is mixed up with idolatry. Aviachol, Choser u'mevakesh afilu tzadik echad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks for one tzadik. Today, shelo yafoch et ha'olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't cause a uprising in the world. שנאמר, אשר עוד ביקשה נפשי ולא מצאתי. אחר כך מצא לאלקנה אדם אחד. HaKadosh Baruch Hu finds one man, that is Elkana. ויהי איש אחד, one man who wants to hear the message of God. One man in the whole of Har Ephraim who is willing to take up a mission. Okay, we will see in a couple of minutes how Elkanah is compared to one other man. But before we go into that, let's go one more sentence. The end of Sefer Shoftim. How is it possible that in the whole of the Jewish people, there's only one man? Say Chazal. Say the last sentences of Sefer Shoftim. היתהלכו משם בני ישראל בעת ההיא, איש לשבטו ולמשפחתו, יצאו משם איש לנחלתו. Everybody went to his little portion of land, and that's where he lived. In inverted commas, all the tzaddikim and all the people, they remained in their house. Nobody cared about anything. איש לשבטו ולמשפחתו. בימים ההם אין מלך בישראל. End of the period of Shoftim, or Bichlal, the whole period of Shoftim, there's nobody who takes up leadership. איש הישר בעיניו יעשה. Right. Now, let's try to analyze what we have here. What we have here is the following. We have a generation where idolatry is all over the place. The main one is Esel Micha, the Esel of Micha. That's how Sefer Shoftim ends. Where are all the great people? They're in their houses. But what they say in Yiddish, tzaddik in kilts. They cover, they go into their fur coats, and they remain there. Not a Chofetz Chaim who goes around telling people, going around giving shiurim. No, they're all stuck in their houses. Okay? They don't have Zoom. They don't have the ability to speak to other people. And therefore, what are they doing? They're in their own houses. And that's why they do not have any impact on their generation. There's only one man who is willing to take on having an impact on his generation. And that is Elkana. Elkana is the one who HaKadosh Baruch Hu finds who's willing to take up, the mission. Now, let's give ourselves another person like that. And this week's parsha is Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha el Artzecha. Now, gives the great Sfat Emet fascinating insight. There's the Sfat Emet, Vayomer Hashem el Avram. Okay, it's not in front of you. Okay, this is an idea which the Sfat Emet gives. Kodesh Baruch Hu cries out to the world. He says to the world, Lech Lecha, change the world. I need somebody to change the world. Said the Sfat Emet, every single person HaKadosh Baruch Hu cries out, but only one person is willing to hear that message of Lech Lecha. There's only one person in the world who's actually willing to go up and say, yeah, I'm willing to take on the mission and Lech Lecha. Go out and do things. Go to Eretz Yisrael. That's Lech Lecha, says the Sfat Emet. Sfat Emet says, Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't speak to Avram. Avram hears the voice. Avram, so to speak, hears the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying the world needs to be changed. That's Avram Avinu. The same thing, say Chazal, is exactly the same thing compared with the Elkana. Now let's go to the page, the next page. Okay? Say Chazal. Ana Dvei Eliyahu. Okay? היה להם לסנהדרין גדולה, שהניח משה ויהושע פנחס ואלעזר עמהם, שיקרבו חבלים של ברזל במותניהם. What should they have done? They should have taken ropes around themselves. ויגביהו בגדיהם למעלה מארכובת אביהם. יחזרו בכל עיירות ישראל. And they should go around all the cities of Israel. יום אחד בבית אל. One day, they should go to בית אל. יום אחד לחברון. One day they should visit חברון. יום אחד לירושלים. ילמדו את ישראל דרך ארץ. They should teach Am Yisrael Torah. Think to yourself, Rabotai, there are no books. There are no books. So who do we know? How do people get information about the Torah? It's only oral. There are no books. People don't know how to read. So who's going to give over the messages? The Talmidei Chachomim. And that's what they should have done. They should have gone around all the places of Eretz Yisrael and teach Torah. B'shana, b'shtayim, b'shalosh, עד שיתיישבו ישראל בארצם, יתגדל ויתקדש שמו של הקדוש ברוך הוא בעולם, שברא מסוף העולם ועד סופו. And that's the way that the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be multiplied. Hein lo asu ken. They never did that. Line number 49. אלא כשנכנסו לארצם, כל אחד ואחד נכנס לכרמו ליינם. Everybody went into their vineyard and their wines. אמר, שלום עליך נפשי. I want a quiet life. I don't need anybody to drive me up the wall with questions and giving shiurim. No. I want a quiet life. כדי שלא להרבות את התורח. That nobody should trouble me. Says the Chofetz Chaim on this. ומזה נוכל להבין כמה מוטל גודל החיוב. Line number 55, Rob, 54. כמה גודל החיוב על כל איש מישראל שיוכל ויכול להועיל מתורתו לאחרים. how he can transfer Torah to other people. באיזו אופן שהוא, שלא יתרפא מזה. Never stop. Person who's got something to say, he should say it. He should teach Torah. באמת דבר זהו בכלל מה שנסתווינו בתורה, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך. שלא כתוב תאהב את השם. You don't say love God in the future. רק ואהבת. להראות שצריך גם כן לאהב אותה על אחרים. You've got to make the Torah beloved on other people. וכתהית בספרי על הפסוק הזה, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, אהבהו על בריאותיו כאברהם אבינו. ידוע שעל ידי תורה בא אדם לידי אהבת השם, כמו שכתבנו לאל, בפרק י"ב. The Chofetz Chaim learns from this midrash, חובה, that everybody who knows how to teach Torah, Aboisai, has got a chova to always teach Torah to other people. That's what we learn from Avraham Avinu, and that is the mission, says the Chofetz Chaim, of every single person. A person should never ever say, Shalom Alecha Nafshi. Keep quiet, don't do anything. I like my house, I like my four walls, I don't need anything, give me my parnosa, and that's it. That's the period of Shoftim. Nobody takes up leadership. Right. If anybody wants to, I'm opening up this part. If anybody wants to say anything, Rabbi Say, you can say. Because this is the introduction to the idea of Shmuel. We'll see how Shmuel takes this up as his mission. Anybody's got anything to say, please, I'm unmuting people if you want. Or can I carry on? Harold, do you want to say something?
No.
Right, can we carry on?
Carry on.
Right, let's carry on. So now let's go back to share screen. And we're going to carry on now to the next stage. Davar Acher, line number 59. Davar Acher, Dam Echad Me'elef Matzati, Zu Avraham. Hech, El Tzafui Haya. It was seen in the future. Shelo Ya'amod, Ad Shelo Ya'amod Avraham, Shiamdu 1,000 dor, there'll be 1,000 years. ואחר כך אברהם. וכן דוד אמר, דבר ציווה ל1,000 דור אשר קראת את אברהם. וכיוון שראה שאין מהם הניה אלא כולם רשעים, קיפל אותם, והעבירה מהם 20 דור, ואחר כך ברא אברהם. Means to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had the hope that from Abraham there would only be 1,000 years. I won't need anybody till Abraham for 1,000 years. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu see? Already after 20 generations, we need somebody like Abraham. Because think to yourself, two revolutions, two catastrophes had taken place in the world. The flood and Dora Palaga. Okay? Physical annihilation and spiritual annihilation. So Avraham Avinu already after 20 generations was needed. ואחר כך בא אברהם. לכך נאמר אדם אחד מ1,000 מצאתי, מצא את האדם הגדול הענקים ההוא. כך אף אלקנה. The same thing about Elkana. נמצא יחידי בכל דורו. Elkana was similar to Abraham in every way. בכל מעשיו של אלקנה דומים לאברהם. איך? אלא. Abraham נקרא איש. He was a personality. הכתיב אתה אשב אשת איש. ואלקנה כתיב ויהי איש. אברהם נקרא נביא. ואלקנה נקרא נביא. אברהם הקנה לקדוש ברוך הוא שמיים וארץ. Abraham proclaimed to the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the owner of the world. דכתיב בירך ברוך אברהם לקהל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ. ואלקנה הקנה לקדוש ברוך הוא שמיים וארץ שנאמר ושמו אלקנה. What does it mean Elkana? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the owner. He believed that his father, who gave him that name, that was his mission. To carry on Avraham Avinu's mission. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the owner of the world. אברהם דכתיב נקרא אחד, דכתיב אחד היה אברהם. ואלקנה נקרא אחד, דכתיב ויהי איש אחד. One person in a generation. And that is what Rabbi Chia says in line number 72. V'amar Rabbi Chia, Avraham bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Afilu b'shvil tzadik echad ha'olam mitkayem. Shene'emar v'tzadik yisod olam. What was Abraham's mission? Says the Rambam. V'itchil le'amod v'likro b'kol gadol. Avraham Avinu begins to call the whole world. Ulehodiyam sheyesh sham Eloka echad. There is one God. V'lo ra'ui la'avod. V'haya mehalech. He used to walk. V'koreh, and read. Umekabetz ha'am, and to gather people together me'ir le'ir, from city to city. Umamlacha le'mamlacha, and from kingdom to kingdom. All his way from Haran to Eretz Israel, he used to give droshas. He used to speak to the people. V'shoalim lo al dvarav, and ask him, what are you doing? Ad al dvarav aya modia lekol echad ve'echad kefi da'ato. Everybody according to his spiritual standing. Ad sheyachzireu lederech ha'emet, ad shenitkabtzu elav alfei revavot. Hundreds of thousands of people. V'hem anshei bet Avraham. They are the members of the family of Avraham. V'shatal belibam ha'ikar hagadol hazeh. And he plants in their heart this message, this principle. There's a fascinating concept which the Ravad brings out. Because we know, Hamalet Gerim, a person who does Brit Milat Gerim, Mevarech. Baruch ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shekidushanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu lamul et hagerim. Where do we know there is a mitzvah to bring in proselytes? Says the Ravad in Baal HaNefesh, Im tomar, if you want to say, Eichan tzivanu, where did HaKadosh Baruch Hu command us to do such a thing? Answers the Ravad, Et HaNefesh Shirasu B'Charan. Avram Avinu goes around bringing together people to believe in one God. Alo, im nitkansu kol bayei olam. If all the people of the world will get together, inam yicholim livro afilu yetush echad. Ela hagerim, the only people who do you make? The people who you make. It's written in the pasuk, asher asu b'charan. What does it mean you made them? No, you transformed them. You created them from somebody new identity, new personality. Somebody new. That is what they did, what Avraham Avinu does. As if he created them. And that's the mitzvah asher tzivanu. Right? Avraham Avinu fulfills the principles of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu beloved on everybody. And that's why that was his mission. Now let's go to Elkana. The Midrash says, Yotze badavar ata omer, line number 90. Vahi esh echad miratayim, haya Elkana ole 4 pa'amim b'shana. He used to go 4 times a year. Shlosha min Torah, the 3 regalim, and 1 echad shekibel alav. Shneemar va'ala ish ahu meiro miyamim leyamim. Elkana, hu ala, v'ishto, uvanav, uvnotav, his family, achiv, v'achyotav, v'kol krovav imo, v'chol b'nei beito, haya malet hakol imo. Everybody used to come with him. Why did he bring up all his family? Lama malet hakol imo. Shayu olim baderech, v'lanim birchova shel ir. And they used to live in the middle of each town. מתקבצים האנשים לבד ואנשים לבד, שכן האיש מדבר עם האיש, אישה עם האישה, גדול עם גדול, קטון עם קטן. הייתה המדינה מרגשת. Everybody got emotional. היו שואלים להם, להיכן תלכו? Where are you going? אומרים, בית השם בשילה. We're going to שילה. שמשם תצא תורה ומשם מצווה. ואתם, למה לא תבוא עמנו? ונלך ביחד. Why don't you want to come with us? נלך ביחד. מיד עיניהם משגרות דמעות. The people begin crying. אמר להן, נעלה עמכם. Let's go together. אמרו לו הן. עד לשנה הבאה 5 בתים. 5 households. לשנה אחרת, the next year, 10 בתים. לשנה אחרת הגישה כולה לעלות. והיו עולים ממנה כ-60 בתים. ובדרך שהיה עולה שנה זו לשנה אחרת, אינו עולה אלא בדרך אחרת. Every year went a different way. אלקנה הכריע את ישראל לכף זכות. חינך אותם במצוות, זיכו רבים על ידו. הקדוש ברוך הוא בוחן ליבות וכליות. אומר לו אלקנה, אתה הכרעת את ישראל לכף זכות וחינכתם במצוות, וזיכו רבים על ידיך. אני אוציא ממך בן שיכריע את ישראל לכף זכות, ויחנך אותם במצוות, ויזכה רבים על ידו. So what did we have here? Rabbi Isai, we had a Meshugana. We had a Meshugana. Guy who, 1 year, okay, decides to take his family with him. Shiloh. First year, takes a few members of his family. He goes, why? By one village. And the people of that village ask him, where are you going? Etc., etc., etc. Every year he goes a different way. Every year he has a new impact. He imbues them in keeping, just at the beginning, one mitzvah, going to Shiloh. And the impact which Elkana has on people is immense. He has this amazing ability to what? To create a feeling of connection to the Mishkan. That, Rabotai, is the success of Elkana. That's the only mitzvah which we hear Elkana does. If we go back to the sentences, let's just go back to the screen, we will see that the only thing which Elkana does, if we go back to the sentences, is the following. Line number 3. Allah, האיש ההוא מאירו מימים ימימה, להשתחוות ולסבוח. We don't know any other mitzvahs. ויהי היום ויזבח אלקנה. Every year, he keeps this mitzvah. This mitzvah is Meshugasa. Okay? Now, let me give you an example. Okay? In the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zechet Tzadik Livrocha, okay, he went out with keeping, everybody's got to keep one mitzvah, fill-in. Famous fill-in campaign of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They had all these Meshugoyim strapping the people, strapping them, putting on fill-in. Okay? That's exactly what Elkana did. Exactly what Elkana did. One mitzvah, that's what you've got to do. Okay, Rabbi Warren Goldstein this year from South Africa, Shabbos campaign. A Meshugas. One Shabbos a year, you've got to keep Shabbos. What does one Shabbos a year do? The impact of one mitzvah on the Jewish people. The one who taught us this was Abraham. The second Meshugana was Elkana. Elkana does it in a social way. He doesn't give Musa. What does he say? He says, come with me. Let's go to the football match. Let's go to the basketball match. Let's go to the baseball game. Let's go to the Mishkan. Let's go to Yerushalayim. It's a social thing. It's a social campaign has the ability to entice everybody to go around it. What we're going to do in Shiloh, we're going to have a fres there. Yeah, we'll offer up a bit of a korban, or we're going to have a good meal there. Aye, what's the meal? Here is a meal. Rabbi Isai was Aliyah LaRegel. Let's go. And Derech Agav, by the way, he managed to change a whole generation. We will see how his son Shmuel follows his way. That was Elkana. He managed to give HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, the feeling he owns the world again. Let's go one more stage and then I'll let you speak. Say Chazal, next Midrash. Okay. Line number, which I want to read with you, is the whole objective. Line number 105. Allah Ishahu Mit'aleh Bebeito. He became somebody important in his family house. Mit'aleh B'chatzero. He was all the time going up. Allah. The whole time had an impact. He was going up and up in the scale of the Jewish people and the impact. The whole time going up. Mit'aleh Bebeito, Mit'aleh B'chatzero, Mit'aleh Be'iro, Mit'aleh B'chol Yisrael. And eventually, all Am Yisrael follows him. Why is that? Because he goes everywhere. He goes every time he goes to Shiloh, he goes a new way. He finds a new direction. He doesn't use Waze. He doesn't use Google Maps. He finds new ways of getting to Shiloh. It might take him longer, but that's what he does. Now let's see what the impact of Aliyah LaRegel is, because we see he takes this specific mitzvah of Aliyah LaRegel. Says the Chinuch, Shenitztavenu la'arot kol zacha b'Yerushalayim. Every male has to go up in Yerushalayim. 3 פעמים בשנה. In Pesach, Shavuot וסוכות. אז זה נאמר 3 פעמים בשנה, יראה כל זכרך את פני השם. בשורשי המצווה, למען יראו כל ישראל, all עם ישראל will see. ייתנו אל ליבם and pay attention בפעולת הקורבן, המעורר לבבות, כולם מקוטנם ועד גודלם, every single one of us, חלק השם ונחלתו. עם קדוש ונבחר, אוצרי עדותו, holy people, the treasure of all the peoples תחת קשר המים. על כן יבואו 3 פעמים בשנה בית השם. הוא כאומרם על דרך משל. הננו לתל, לעבדים. We are like servants. נכנסים ובאים בצל תורתו. We are invited into the palace of the king. ובחזקתו. סמוכים לעד לעולם באהבתו ויראתו. זר לא יבוא בתוכנו. No stranger goes with us. כי אנחנו לבדנו בני ביתו. We are his family. Elkana wanted to give a message that all Am Yisrael are the family of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The only way he does that is try to remember there are no books. There are no people can't read. So what he has to do is he has to create enthusiasm, emotional enthusiasm. And that's, he sees the only mitzvah which will create a social and emotional enthusiasm is by going to Yerushalayim, going to Shiloh. This action, יתעורר דעתנו, ונכניס בליבנו מוראו, ונקבע ברעיוננו, אהבתו, ונזכה לקבל חסדו וברכתו. Therefore, that way, Am Yisrael connect up to God again. Okay, think to yourselves, Rabotai, that in his period, the concept of a shul never existed. The concept of tefillah b'tzibur never existed. The whole concept of tefillah b'tzibur started off when Am Yisrael come back from the destruction of the first temple. Ezra Sofer creates tefillah which everybody will say together. It will be what is known as tefillah b'tzibur. In the period of the Shoftim, there was nothing like that. Only communal mitzvah which took place where all Am Yisrael could get together was Aliyah LaRegel 3 times a year. That was it. Okay? We take nowadays Birkat Kohanim. Okay? Birkat Kohanim has this big impact. This year, unfortunately, we couldn't do it. But think to yourselves what an impact it is when you have 300, 500 Kohanim, and goodness knows how many thousands of people. Aliyah LaRegel. Okay? Yerushalayim. Okay? All of you guys who live in Yerushalayim know what it is when during Chol HaMoed Pesach and Chol HaMoed Sukkot where you can't move around. Okay? But that is Yerushalayim. That's what Elkana wanted to do his generation. Now, the fascinating thing is the explanation which we're now going to learn of one of the great commentators on the Torah, Haktav HaKabbalah. Now, please follow me because it's one of the... Yes, Harold. Yeah. Please speak. Any questions, please do now.
Yeah.
Okay, because... Yeah.
So what was Avram Avinu's one mitzvah?
Pardon? Emunah.
What was
Achnasat orchim. Achnasat orchim with emunah. Remember, Vayita Eshel Beersheva. Okay? What did he do? How did he create the impact? Achnasat orchim. Okay? I'll give you more than that. There's a fascinating, one of the great shiurim which I heard once on a tape of Reb Noach Weinberg, Zeichet Tzadik Livrocha, the founder of Eish HaTorah. Okay, now I can't say it like him. This was amazing. Okay? The beginning of next week's parsha, Vayero elav Abraham be'elonei Mamre, v'hu yoshev petach ha'oel kechom hayom. Okay? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avraham Avinu is sitting outside. Okay? Looking for people. Says Reb Noach Weinberg the following. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beginning to speak to Avraham Avinu. Vayero elav el Hashem be'elonei Mamre. He sees 3 people walking towards him, Shlosha Nashim. Says Reb Noach Weinberg, he says, God, wait a couple of minutes. There are a few strangers down the road there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, I'm talking to you. Listen to me. Avraham Avinu says, no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Those guys have been walking a long time. They're tired. They're hungry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, I'm talking to you. Avraham Avinu says, Achnosas oilchim, the milus chasodim. How can I ever teach people about you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you don't let me to call these people in? I promise you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you'll have another 3 Hasidim if you let me do what I want to do now. From here, Chazal say, Gdola achnasat orchim yoter mikabalat pnei hashchina. Why? Because if a person does achnosas orchim in the correct way, automatically people will ask him, what? You're calling in 3 strangers? What are you doing here? Avraham Avinu has an objective. Achnosas orchim is an emtsa'i, is a way of bringing people into achnosas, into HaKadosh Baruch Hu's fold. That's exactly what Elkana does. He sees the mitzvah of Aliyah LaRegel as an aim to get to the objective. My objective is that Am Yisrael should believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Koneh shamayim va'aretz. How do I do it? I create enthusiasm. I use a mitzvah, one specific mitzvah, which will change the whole directive of the world, of the Jewish world. Right. Now, what I want to learn with you now is a most unbelievable keta, part from a sefer which is called Haktav HaKabbalah. Haktav HaKabbalah is a book which was written by Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg. He was a pupil of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and It's a fascinating explanation on the Torah. He uses many, many different methods of explaining, but this is what I want to learn with you now. Line number 190.
Can you up the size of the print?
Can I up the size of the print? Don't ask me how to do that. I've got
I
no
see.
idea how to do it. Oh, 1 minute. Okay. 1 minute. Let me see. Hold on. Okay. 1 minute. We'll see what I can do. I'm no computer great guy. Okay, is that better for you?
Of course.
Right, okay then.
Thank you.
Right. No problem. מזה העניין נראה לי. שהונח שם רגלים. What does the word שלושה רגלים mean? Now, the usual translation is foot festival. Everybody used to go up there by foot. He says no. הם מוליכים, מרגילים ומנהילים, מנהלים את ישראל. Get people used to, not from the word regel, it's used to the word ragil. Make people used to going in the ways of Hashem. היסוד אשר עליו נבנה כל הדת הישראלי, יציאת מצרים. Foundation of the Jewish people of Emunah is יציאת מצרים. היא על ידי האותות והמופתים הגדולים הנוראים שנעשו אז לעינינו. Now says the Ktav HaKabbalah, how do I continue this divine providence? We live on Yetzias Mitzrayim, but how do I continue it? לכן, הפליא הוא יתברך חסדו, להורות, גם לעיני דורות הבאים, even the future generations, שהנהגתו עמהם בדרך נפלא, that he will behave to the people in an unbelievable way, למעלה מן הטבע, above nature, בלתי מושגות לשכל אנושי, man cannot understand it, והם הניסים המופלאים שהיו מתמידים בבית המקדוש, the miracles which took place in the Beis HaMikdash. 10 miracles took place in the Beis HaMikdash. כמו האש שירדה מן השמיים, fire coming down from heaven. הייתה על המערכה רבוצה כארי. On the underneath there was a constant fire, even though it was an open air. נס הקרובים, שעה שהישראל עולים לרגל, היו מגלים להם את הפרוכת, they used to bring out the ארון הקודש, ומראים להם את הקרובים, שהיו מורים זה בזה, ואומרים להם, ראו חיבתכם לפני המקום, see הקדוש ברוך הוא loves you. ונס נר המערבי, and the western candle, שבו היה מתחיל, etc. That means there were constant miracles in the Beis HaMikdash. Line number 140. והנס הנפלא, שהיו עומדים צפופים, ומשתחווים רווחים. They used to have plenty of space when they used to bow down. היו מכונסים בעזרה ברגלים, היו דוחקים בעמידתם. etc. משתחווים לפני ההיכל. נתרווח להם המקום על ידי נס, שכל אחד מרוחק מחברו ד' אמות, כדי שלא ישמע זה תפילת חברו כשמבקש צרכה לפני המקום. Everybody davened, stuck together, but you didn't hear anybody speaking. הנה, לראות כל איש ישראל, בכל אחד מימים טובים, את כבוד מלך עליון בהתברך במקדשו, הלא תיגע בלבבו, רוממות כבוד יוצרו במידה גדולה. Something would affect him in his heart. ויבין מעט מהדרת לעניין אלוקי, יחזק את לבבו, etc. וייתן הכבוד למלך הכבוד להיכנע לפניו ולעובדו כבנאמן. הנה, להשגת תכלית הנפלאה הזו, שהיו חגי השם ומועדיו, מוליכים כל איש ישראל, שעל ידי הניסים שראו בבית המקדוש, היו מונהגים ומובאים לקבל ולקיים חוקי השם, לכן נקראו רגלים. That's why they were called regalim. 3 times a year, Jew got used to seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was the idea of Elkana. Taking them to Shiloh was a spiritual elevation. It wasn't a social, he begins by a social communique. He begins saying, listen, let's go to, what's it called? Let's go to the Beis HaMikdash. Let's go to the Mishkan, etc., etc., etc. And that was his objective. What happened there? People were transformed. People became connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? That was his objective. Now, what happened? Let's go back. What happened? I'll make it bigger for you now. Sorry. Okay, it's a good idea, Phil. Very good. Okay, let me make it bigger. Never thought of that. Right. What happens now? Ze Elkana, line number 159. שהיה מדריך את ישראל, ומעלה אותם לשילה, בכל שנה ושנה, ושנה בדרך אחרת. לכן הכתוב מקלסו, פסוק praises him, ועלה האיש ההוא. Every year he went up. Now what's amazing is the following. What did the other people say to him? All the other Rabboni would say to him, what do you mean? Teach them Torah. Just like in the period of the Baal Shem Tov. Teach them Torah. What are you busy wrapping tefillin around people for? What are you busy with other mitzvahs for? What are you teaching them just to go to Yerushalayim? Says Rabbeinu Nissim Gaon on the basis of a Yerushalmi. Et lasot lashem hefeo toratecha. There are times where people need to come and say, this mitzvah is more important than another mitzvah. Yoshutamo bigmora dibnei ma'arava. Amarav zeira. Im nizdakna umatcha. Amod v'gidra. If the nation becomes old and antiquated and couldn't care less, stand up and define to them one mitzvah. Shem she'asa Elkana. שהיה מדריך את ישראל לפעמי רגלים, מה טעם ועלה איש ההוא. Sometimes there's a necessity to say one mitzvah precedes another one. Because by doing that, correct, et lasot lashem, there's a time to do things. There's a necessity to come and say one mitzvah is more important. How do you do such a thing? David HaMelech says, yeah, that's what you've got to do. Now, often people don't have the ability, other leaders don't have the other ability to see such a thing. What? As the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to say, put on tefillin on everybody. Well, all of a sudden tefillin becomes a more important mitzvah? Yeah, it does. In certain periods, there's a necessity for that idea. Because that way becomes an emtsa'i. Next time he'll want to put on tefillin, he'll go to shul, etc., etc., etc. So that people don't often understand. And here the Midrash, the Yerushalmi, comes along and teaches us, Et lasot lashem b'feirot toratecha. Sometimes you have to use all different means in order to build, what's it called? Now, the identity of the Jewish people. Now comes David HaMelech. Perek Ayin Chet, chapter 78 in Tehillim, is one of the spakim which speaks about historical perspectives. And we say it. Yachisuhu v'motam. They vexed him with their high places. V'psilehem yakniu, and they incensed him with their idols. Shama Elokim, God got angry. Itaber, and he was enraged from anger. V'yim'as mod b'Yisrael. V'yitosh Mishkan Shiloh, Oel Shikein Ba'adam. He forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent he set amongst men. Now, what happened? David HaMelech looks at it. Vayachisu b'motam. Bimei Eli Shmuel, says the Radak, היו בהם עבודה זרה. עד שהשיבם שמואל לדרך טובה. בחר שוב אהרון משדה פלישתים. שמע אלוקים דברי החסה, יתוש משכן שילה, הארון שהיה בשילה. All what Elkana tries to do, uplift the Jewish people, changing them, making Shiloh the center of Jewish identity, this unfortunately doesn't last very long. So if you haven't got a Meshuggah who will carry on, we haven't got a generation of Meshugoyim who carry on that, then it all falls to pieces. And that's exactly what David HaMelech says. The idea which Elkanah wanted to bring out, wasn't something which lasted. Okay, it's good 5 years, 10 years, but after that, you have to find another trick. You have to find another trick. And that, unfortunately, is the history of people. But in the period of Elkanah manages to change the movement of the Jewish people from a people where the leaders sat in their houses in their fur coats. Elkanah goes out to them and creates new identity for the Jewish people. That is Elkanah as a public leader. Mirza Hashem, the next shiur, will speak about Elkanah as a person and husband. Questions, whatever you want now. I'm letting anybody speak, whoever wants to. Yes.
Do you see any connection between what Elkanah was doing then and what people are insisting on doing in Uman now?
I don't speak about politics and what goes on. Never, never. Okay? I teach Torah, that's it. Finished.
What
Anybody can use what I said in their own ideas. I didn't say anything about that. All I said is that there's certain times where certain mitzvahs, okay, need as an emtsa'i to create an environment. Okay, which mitzvahs? I'm too small for that.
But I wonder if the message is that if you focus only on one idea or one behavior or one mitzvah, then ultimately that becomes an avodah zarah, because then because that's all you believe, that's all you focus everything on.
Yeah,
that.
but if it's a mitzvah, Harold, tefillin can never become an avodah zarah.
But if that's all you do,
okay,
I'm saying
okay.
if that's the
no,
sum
but if you use that as an
total,
emtsa'i, I'm
yeah,
saying
that's the sum
Elkanah
total,
use it as an emtsa'i, as a
okay,
way.
it doesn't say that.
Okay, that's the greatness of people. Okay, what is your objective? Do you want to use one mitzvah, hefer toratecha, or do you change that into one mitzvah and that's all you've got to keep? The person doesn't use it as a what's it called? As a means of going forward. Okay, it won't work.
Where
But
are we?
okay,
Where
what I'm
are we
saying
in
is,
history?
wait a minute. It's like the Mishnah in Brachos says about prayer. It says, don't be myrich on your prayer too much, because you might actually think that it was your prayer that
True.
caused,
I agree with you.
that caused something, and you believe in yourself more than you really understand that it was from HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Correct.
So it's like if you concentrate so much on tefillah, you'll think it's from you, and you'll and in essence that's the definition of that's avodah zarah. So it seems that that's the message.
Jack, you wanted to say something?
I just want to say thank you very much.
Right. Okay.
Timing was what I wanted to find out. When exactly, historically, did he live?
Elkanah.
Yeah.
Elkanah was about 200 years after going into Eretz Israel, 150 years approximately. After going, then I'll give you the year next week. Next year, I'll tell you exactly how many years after going out of Egypt.
But period, in terms of the period, this was
straight after the Shoftim. Straight after the period of the Shoftim.
Right. before the building of the Beit HaMikdash.
Yeah, of course, 200 years before, 150 years.
Thank you.
Okay, shkoyach.
Okay, we'll carry on next week. Next shiur, I'll speak about Elkana as a husband and as a person.
Incidentally, the discussion you just had about the effect of tefillin, I have been observing it in a social way, that in the army, there are many young men who will fight to put on the tefillin every day. Also, was at the end of the Holocaust. But other things, they're not necessarily as machmir and other things.
True,
as
I agree.
tefillin. It's an amazing thing.
I agree. It's a social mitzvah. I agree with you. I'm not saying, okay?
No, it's more than a social mitzvah. It's their attachment to the Jewish religion.
I agree with you. Agree, 100%. 100%.
I'm amazed by it.
Listen, if you say, what do they say? When they put on tefillin, they also say Shema.
Yeah, sure.
Right, you understand? So therefore, it's not making it into Avodah Zorah. It's making it into Kabbalah Malchus Shamayim.
Well, that's my
the most important mitzvah.
Even if they don't keep a lot of other mitzvahs.
100%.
They're not going.
100%.
They're not
okay.
Going.
Also, everybody.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Be well. Thank you.
Keep well, everybody.